We all know that rendering is about polishing the details and showing off the material quality. Yet there are so many different types of material that exist, whether it's types of clothing, hard surfaces like metals or plastics, or even visual effects like pure energy or wind. Where do we even begin? Unfortunately, there is no universal rule to rendering. Each material will call for a different approach. However, there are three major factors about every material that will make understanding rendering so much more simple. It's like cooking. Depending on the qualities of our ingredients, our final dish will have a different flavor. And the main qualities we want to consider when it comes to materials are the following: reflectivity, transparency, and texture. Reflectivity is a spectrum ranging from chrome to matte, and depending on the material, it will dictate how much contrast we use, because the more reflective, the more clearly the lights and darks will bounce off of its surface, whereas the more matte the material is, the more it will retain its initial values and colors. Now, transparency is pretty self-explanatory. It's also a spectrum ranging from fully see-through to a material that won't let any light pass through it. The interesting thing here, though, lies more in the middle ground: translucent materials. These are materials that let a little light through, like skin for example. This is why we see a red glow on the skin when it's hit by a strong source of light. It's coming from the blood vessels underneath the skin. It happens when the light penetrates through the skin and reflects out the color of the blood vessels underneath. We call this subsurface scattering. But besides that, for the most part, transparency is a pretty simple concept to grasp. And finally, we have texture. This quality is probably the most relevant when people think of rendering, because depending on texture, it can affect the amount of details we see on a given surface of a material. I like to separate them into two main categories: hand-painted textures versus patterns. To maximize efficiency, when there are a lot of artificial repeating shapes and forms, like on snake scales or clothing texture patterns for example, I like to photobash textures, as there's no need to paint every individual shape, and in fact, if you did, it would probably look very unnatural because you're bound to make mistakes. On the other hand, when it comes to painting organic textures like wood or fur, instead of photo bashing, which in this case would make it look very unnatural, giving it something similar to the uncanny valley effect, where basically when something gets really close to looking human-like, something about it will feel very off. Instead, by hand painting these textures, we have the opportunity to show off the imperfections of an organic material, paradoxically making it feel more natural and realistic compared to using photo textures. By breaking down materials into these three components, rendering becomes so much more simple to understand. Of course, knowing these concepts won't suddenly make you amazing at rendering. Besides the theory, it also takes quite a bit of practice, trial and error, and just gathering the right references. So don't feel too defeated if you don't see any immediate results.